Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Boxing Weights and Rugby YouTube channel. And we are back. And this month, we're going to go through, with my friends Okanenda, the boxing through September. How are we doing, boys?
All good.
Doing good. Looking forward to Saturday.
Absolutely. Yeah, the nerves are real, but we'll be avoiding the rugby chat for now. How are we all doing?
Yeah, good. Apart from battling COVID.
Yes. For people that don't know, Enda's been struggling with COVID over the last be a little while. You've had that.
No, it's just it's about a week now, and I need to get rid of it by Saturday. So
don't feel too sorry for him. He's going to the rugby.
Yeah, don't feel. And I'm paying for that, not just in illness, but in monetary terms as well.
Oh yeah,
forget about
absolutely. How are we doing, Luke?
Yeah, not too bad. Busy starting a new job this week, so
I hope it goes well, my friend.
But,
yeah, it's always knackering, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, there was only one place to get started, and it was from the boxing this weekend. It was Canelo versus Charlo for the undisputed super middleweight championship of the world. What did we think, gentlemen?
You can go on ahead, Luke, because you saw it live.
Yeah, look, I stayed up for it, and you guys know I had a good rating on Charlo. Thought he had the ability.
You really did, yeah.
You know, I really believed in his ability to cause Canelo a lot of problems and maybe get a decision. If the judges were fair, but look, he didn't come and try to win at all. He got one round in and thought to himself, "This is going to be harder than I thought. I'll just coast and try and survive." And that's exactly
payday. You want payday?
Yeah, that's essentially. Even in round 7, where he got dropped, was probably his best round of the fight for landing his own shots too. But even when he got dropped, they weren't big shots that dropped him. Nothing hurtful landed when he went and took a knee. He just kind of took a break for himself and probably had to consider his options going into the second half of the fight and think to himself, am I going to stick this out or not? But he just coasted. Canelo likes to have someone in front of him to look spectacular, and he lets his hands go lovely in combinations. He cut off the ring extremely well, better than he has done in a long time on Saturday, which was good to see because he didn't know what to do with Bivol. Didn't just followed him around, whereas with Charlo he cut him off and made sure he got him in the corners and on the ropes where he needed him. But yeah, look, Charlo just went in with the wrong headspace clearly, and the wrong game plan. Like Derek James, I have shot on him in the past for his corner work in other fights, but he did quite well in the fight of the weekend. Like Eddie Reynoso is always on point with Canelo. He knows Canelo inside and out, so he's always going to know what to tell him to do. With Charlo, James was trying to fire him up and get him going. That's all he could do, was try and be a motivator. But look, it wasn't enough. Charlo didn't want to be there, and he was happy to coast out the 12 rounds. And as Enda said there rightly, his payday. You know, he can saunter on down now to 160 or 154 again and try and recover some titles maybe. But really disappointing.
I don't think he goes near 154 again.
No, because Bud is going to be creeping around there soon.
Exactly.
But yeah, look, I'm just really as a boxing fan, I'm disappointed. You know, Charlo's accomplishments and performances at 154 were nothing short of brilliant. I think we all rated him fairly highly. You know, I rated Canelo. I still rate Canelo probably a lot lower than you guys. I think he was on a decline. He's shown a new spirit, a new lease of life at the weekend, which is great to see. Maybe the rest did him some good because he's off. What was it now? 9 months
since September. No, he fought in May, didn't he? He fought Ryder.
Oh, he did. He fought Ryder.
We all forget that one.
So he had the wrist surgery since Ryder. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's a quick turnaround.
Yeah. I think it's part of the reason this was on the 30th and not the Mexican Independence weekend.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, look, if his wrist is 100% and that was hampering him in the past, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, he looked better than he's looked in years to me. And I'm excited to see what's next for Canelo. I know what I want next for Canelo. But that probably differs to you guys just from my bias towards Terence Crawford. But I wouldn't say no to a Benavidez or anyone else who's at the top of 168, you know, or even Bivol coming down. You know, he's got a lot of options. He is Canelo.
Well, this is it. And I think with, I'll just kind of echo my thoughts on that, which was I rate Charlo very highly as a 154, but going into the fight, we were talking about how I didn't think that you could come off the inactivity that Charlo's had, move up 2 weight classes, and in your first fight beat the best guy in that weight class. It just very, very rarely happens. I'm trying to think. The last time I can think of somebody doing that was Mosley over De La Hoya.
Yes, yeah.
And he didn't come off 60 months of inactivity, and Shane Mosley is 5 times the fighter that either Charlo is. But what's happening now is, again, the narrative, like, things change and evolve, and everyone's changing it. Like, so for instance, obviously you'd picked Charlo in the kind of the run up to it, but people are now kind of saying, well, Canelo picked him because he was 2 weight classes below, and the narrative changes. And once it was he doesn't fight brothers, and now it's a case of he's picked the smaller guy, even though that I think Mel is better than Maul. I've always thought that Mel is better than Maul. And I actually think that Jermell did such a poor job that he's talked his brother out of the fight, because I'm telling you, the next fight on that slate is meant to be Maul.
That would have been the narrative, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, he had a war with Jermell. Jermell will do better, do you know?
Yeah, because he's the bigger, heavier puncher. And it was, to your point, in the 7th round, I think he did get hurt. And the reason he got hurt is he didn't see the punch. Because, again, they did a really good job in commentary. And I thought that the Showtime boys, they're really, really good. And he had his hand up because Canelo normally brings the right hand round.
That's right.
And as you see, Canelo does a very Marquez job of bringing it right down the middle, even though it loops. And he catches him. And credit to Charlo, he goes, I am hurt. And he goes, if I stand still here, Canelo will actually let his hands go, and then I'm in trouble. Whereas he just takes the knee.
Had to drop,
and he goes, the hands drop. And he goes, takes the knee, right, okay. And then by the time it's a split second, and it's, like you said, he never really tried to win. He never put any authority behind the jab. But I mean, the way that he punches, just in terms of the technique, it's in a very small window, which is good because you want to punch here. But there's no whip, or there was no variation on it. It was just touch. There was no power behind it. And I think the Charlos are slightly overrated in the punching department, because what they do is, it's going to sound really strange, right? They get great KOs when they get them.
They're so well placed. That's the thing.
Yeah, the KOs are always great when they land. But if you actually look at the numbers don't stack up that they're elite punchers.
The thing is, as well, to add to that point, is when you look up Jermell Charlo KO, you get that counter uppercut he threw.
Yeah, against Lubin.
Yeah, and that's a once in a lifetime knockout. He's never going to be able to do that again.
No,
you know.
Or the Rosario jab to the body.
Yeah, you don't recreate those.
No.
So like,
and the thing is, Canelo doesn't get hit by those.
Exactly. And like with the Charlos, both of them, their style is, and this is why I thought he had a good chance against Canelo, was because they're very good at making people miss up close. Getting their own work and then getting out, which is ideal against a Canelo, because Canelo likes to do his work up close. So if you can make him miss where he's best, get your own shots off and get away, or try and hurt him, that's a good recipe to try and defeat Canelo. But Charlo was on his bike from a minute in, we'll say.
Yeah,
and that's not how you do it. Like,
I think
you're not throwing anything with it.
With Canelo, it's always been straight punches and volume that does him in. I actually don't think it's necessarily just movement, unless you're like a Lara. Like, Lara's different.
You have to have you have to be able to make him respect you.
You have to stop him walking through you, which is exactly what Bivol did, because he was so much bigger. And Bivol's brilliant. Bivol is an absolutely phenomenal fighter.
He's a world-class light heavyweight.
Yeah. Golovkin, world-class jab, straight punches, good volume. Charlo doesn't do that. And Charlo lost or had too many hard fights with the likes of Brian Castaño, who's a really good fighter, and Tony Harrison, I'm getting it right?
Yeah.
To do that and then jump up Canelo's leagues apart. But one thing it will take is I really hope that means John Ryder gets a bit more credit, because I thought John Ryder really put it on Canelo. And I think, to your point, I don't think Canelo was that much better versus Charlo than he was against Ryder. I think Ryder is underappreciated and Charlo was slightly overappreciated going into this.
Styles make fights big time.
Styles make fights. But I really... So, what next for Canelo? So I want the Benavidez fight, but I've been wanting the Benavidez fight for months. For years at this point.
That's the one. That is the one.
That's the fight to make at 168, because Canelo is the champion. Benavidez, if he can get the weight off, is the number one contender. He's a 2-time champ.
Why was Canelo always swerving Benavidez?
He's not been always swerving. It's because he's been with Matchroom. And then when Benavidez was meant to fight Canelo, when he was WBC champion, he was being lined up as Canelo's next fight after Smith. That's when he loses his title on the scales. Because he lost his title on the scales, that's why we got the Ildrim fight.
And with Canelo as well, there was so much money riding on Canelo events, well, I won't even call them fights, events, that if Benavidez missed weight by a big margin, there's no coming back from that.
No, they're just going to pull it. So, it's Benavidez's own fault that fight's not happened yet.
Does Benavidez have the tools to win? Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a fight,
Sorry, fire away.
Yeah. No, I'll just give my opinions on that.
Away,
I didn't see the fight live. I saw it the next day and I knew the result. Now, my biggest problem was I saw the weigh-in and Canelo looked absolutely ripped in the weigh-in. And I was like, I was always Canelo points. I had back to win on points. And then all of a sudden I said, he might stop him. But I should have just gone with my initial instinct and stuck with Canelo points. And he did win on points. But that's what he did do and I find this lately with Canelo, he doesn't do any more than he needs to do, And I mean, Charlo made it easy for him, so he said, "Fine, I'll just coast through," and that's what he did. And but it's bad news for boxing because I mean, this was touted so big in the States. This was the battle of undisputed versus undisputed. People paid huge money for this on pay-per-view, and to be given that is not a good deal for boxing going forward. People saying the money's going out of boxing, and it is, and it's only there in the fights with Canelo, or else in the in the heavyweight fights, not super heavyweight, there is no super heavyweight, but in the big heavyweight fights in the Middle East, that's the only place there's money now. And that kind of fight's really turning off Middle America. The people who might want to watch a Canelo fight, or, like that, Charlo's undisputed, yeah, that'll be a good fight. They've paid a lot of money and they got that in return. That'll be a big turnoff for boxing. And all the rumors is now Showtime are leaving,
Yeah, that looks like that's pretty much done.
And Showtime leaves, HBO are gone, we're going to be living on apps. And that's not good for boxing because apps are not what the majority of people, casual people, if you want to casually watch boxing, and that's what boxing needs to survive, it needs casual viewers because the hardcore viewers, by their definition, they're a small minority, and that's not going to be able to pay for all those big fights for the big cards. And I mean, there's only so much money the Middle East are going to put up before they say, actually, boxing isn't giving us the attention we want, and football can do it for them at a fraction of the cost, and they look like they're going big into football. So I think not only was this a loss for Charlo, I think this was a big loss for boxing and how badly he performed on the night. It did boxing no favors. Anyone coming out with that went, well, that was a load of rubbish. You know what I mean? It didn't enhance Canelo's reputation per se either, because everyone went, well, he should have beaten him anyway. He was 2 weights heavier. You know what I mean? So he didn't get any credit for beating him. Now, fair due to him, he beat him, but how does that affect boxing in the medium to long term? Even in the short term, I don't think it does it any good at all. I mean, because you're going to have to look at, a possible super fight with Crawford. Well, will that work because the weights are going down weight, and does that pull the punters, or will they go, hey, we were told that about Charlo, we're not falling for that again? So I do think that, the fight was disappointing, but it was disappointing in more ways than one, and I've been accused of being a doomsdayer, but I really think this isn't good news for boxing when fights like that happen.
I think the weekend as a whole was a bit of a disappointing weekend for boxing.
Oh yeah.
Both in the UK and in the States. And like you say about pay-per-view apps, all this, gone are the days where you could just be flicking through the telly for something to watch and boxing would happen to be on. Obviously not for us because we know it's on, but for those who don't, who's just flicking through, oh geez, I'll watch this. Yeah, just two lads fighting, I'll have a watch. and then they might like the fella who's fighting, or they might watch the whole card and think, Jesus, great, I'll tune in next weekend, whatever's on. That's kind of going, and it's sad. And like, don't get me wrong, now the ITV days are before my time, but I can remember, like, like my dad talking about, like, when he was younger, and like there's only 4 channels on the telly, and there'd be boxing on ITV, there'd be boxing on Channel 4. 2 out of 4 channels there'd be boxing on at the weekends. There'd be something on like that, and that's going as well. We have Channel 5 now, doing its bit, but again, it's not very well advertised.
It's also crap.
Yeah, it's
Well,
not.
For the most
to
part.
be fair, Channel 5 have had some of the better fights domestically.
But
Like, while it is fairly low rent, at least it's competitive, because the worst thing about the other British fights is they're not competitive, because you have the promoters promoting or protecting their cash cow. So they're just in against a nobody, get the head beaten off for 12 rounds, and nobody's any the better. And any of the casual people who have kind of sat through football and, the boxing's on, I'll leave it on, they turn it off. And I don't blame them.
Like, this weekend gone was the first weekend probably ever, actually, that I've not tuned in to the live boxing that was on the UK on Saturday. Like, I didn't bother. Like, I tuned in to Stevie, to his fight, McKenna, tuned into that because I like him, but didn't watch anything else. Didn't really care. Caught it afterwards. Like, it just didn't have the appeal, and that's with 2 shows on at once. They're competing against one another. One was a non-sold out Your Call, and the other one was in the OVO.
Yeah, the OVO Hydro.
And they had
the Wembley Arena. It's not what it is.
Yeah, something like that. They've all got daft names.
Yeah.
But and then when you put it against Zhang Joyce the week before, and you look at the whole card, the only attraction was the main event there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but that's just the way it is.
It's just sad to see. Like, it is in a decline. Like, even the Canelo undercard, you had Barrios versus Ugas, which on paper looked like a decent fight, we'll say. Turned out to be a complete mismatch. Now, Barrios just want to touch on him very quickly. I'd like to see him against anyone at welterweight, to be honest, after that performance. Not like I'd like him against the Boots Ennis.
Yeah, I mean, Boots is the thing. The thing we're kind of at now is, I'm like, right, there's Crawford, there's Ennis, and there's everybody else.
Yeah.
So the only fight I'm interested really in at welterweight.
Ennis is here.
Yeah, but those are the 2.
Oh,
yeah, because Ortiz is gone.
Yeah.
Barrios is one of those ones where I've yet to see anything that blows me away, because I thought Ugas looked shot.
He was awful. He was absolutely awful.
And
but like, you still have to give Barrios his credit, because if you would have asked me who I thought was going to win, I'd have said Ugas, because I didn't know he was that badly shot. Like, but yeah, I'd like to see, like, Barrios comes to fight as well. So
that's the thing. As long as he comes to fight, he'll be in good fights. I think that's important. Exactly. But to touch back on, I'll go very briefly on my Canelo point, and then we'll go on to the kind of state in boxing, which is here's the reason that Canelo didn't push for the stoppage at the end. Do we remember what Canelo's major criticism was about 5-6 years ago? It was his engine.
Yeah.
He hasn't got a gas tank. Suddenly, Canelo's found that actually, if I go with big 1s and 2s and then only put my punches together, press the fight, make you gun shy, he's suddenly gone, this is how I eke out the engine. So he's still got the gas tank. The gas tank's exactly the same, he's just better at using it. He's a more economical driver than he used to be, and that's.
So he's an electric driver now rather than a petrol driver.
Exactly. So he knows he's not got a lead foot anymore. But I think the thing to think about with boxing is, if we're talking about it on a global scale, one, it's too diluted. Okay, so you have far too many channels and far too many entities not working across, not giving us the product that we'd wanted. Although I will say this year's been bloody brilliant in terms of the actual fights that have occurred. It's been excellent. But for too long,
at the top level, at the very top level,
but for too long, we're not doing that, right? Specifically, then in the UK, you now have 3 major entities. You have DAZN and Matchroom, you have TNT and Queensberry, and you have Sky and Boxer. Because they've now got so much, they have to try it. They've invested a lot of money in the people that they have. So they're not willing to put them together. But what's happening now is all these years of not properly building people is coming home to roost. British boxing built up brilliantly on the back of Hatton and then Khan, and then we had Froch and then Joshua. And it built and built and built and built because they went from leisure centres to small arenas to the O2. And suddenly you're filling it because it built and built and built. And they weren't built overnight. It took time, apart from Joshua. But Joshua was brought around the country. And then you've had Bellew. Like, Bellew's been and gone. Hay, been and gone. Frampton, been and gone. Warrington's on his way out. Like, the big guys that were built properly, they're done. So we've now got a generation of fighters that have been brought up across, like, fought nobody that any of us, like, we barely know half of the people that they've fought. Never mind anyone else. And you can't find the fights. Now, if you look at the demographic of boxing fans, our youthful appearances aside, it's aging. It's an older generation that watches boxing. And then if you then stick boxing, like, I've got no problem with DAZN because I've got many problems with DAZN, but I've got no problems with an app.
Yeah.
But if you stick it all on the app, you are only getting us. And there's 50 to 100,000 of us in the UK, probably in terms of the hardcores that will regular watch. That's not enough. And then it just doesn't build until you've got some sort of recognition, which is why which is why Matchroom sold their soul to DAZN. But then Ben Shalom with Sky, who have the actual who have the big platform, they're throwing, like, great example is Boatsi and Aziz. They're throwing it at the O2. Why? That's going to sell nothing. Stick that in a small one. Get the fuck out of London. Right, not that fight particularly, but in general, take people to what they've been doing with Billum Smith. Take them to their hometowns because that's how you build stars over time, right? 2, Boatsi should have been headlining consistently. He's not been active enough, so you never see him fight, but he should have been headlining consistently across smaller arenas and gradually building. You go to York Hall, 1,500 people, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and then you will eventually build as it gets to this big fight. Now they're going, well, they're in a world title eliminator, and don't get me started on the fact that you've got the two guys that turned down a world title fighting in a world title eliminator. We're not going to get started on this, right? That's the problem with boxing, is it's just been an utter shit show in terms of and it's come home to roost. That and the fact that the world is slowly going down the toilet in terms of the economics. You cannot have a world where people are earning less and less money, where everything costs more and more, and make them pay more money for a substandard fight. I did a video a little while back on the cost of boxing, and it is now more expensive than it was then. Yeah. There's about $1,000 to watch boxing a year. Yeah. That's roughly what it works out.
Like, with, say for example now, Boatsi Aziz, brilliant example, right? I said to you in the group chat a while ago, I just stuck that into York Hall.
Exactly.
And you know, I would have had that as a York Hall headliner. I think that has it written all over it. Now I know you said, Adam, you'd have put it in Wembley, which is a bit of a bigger.
Well, no, because I wouldn't put. This is my point. I wouldn't have put this fight in Wembley now because they can't fill it.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're better off doing is squeezing as many people into York Hall.
A cauldron of atmosphere. You know what I mean? An absolute
and building the actual experience, because it's sold on an experience. It's not anymore.
Like, for me, with that fight specifically, maximum the copper box, maximum.
Yeah, there you go.
The copper box is like 6,000.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like, and there's another point as well, right? I think this whole stadium fight business is a load of nonsense.
Oh,
you can't tell me. Nobody can tell me as a fan and as a fighter that you'd have a better experience in Wembley Stadium than you would in a full O2 arena. Not a chance.
Hated going to the stadiums. It was awful.
Right. So I've been in a packed out O2. So the same night as you, Adam.
Yeah.
For Lomachenko Campbell.
Yeah.
Like, and you've been to Vegas for a big fight.
Well, I've been to the O2 as well. Was it packed out? No,
it was for Lomachenko Campbell.
Yeah. Oh, I know, but I wasn't at that. I'm saying I was at the O2.
I've been at Canvey Brook again, a sellout at the MEN.
Yeah.
That atmosphere, if you could bottle that, it'd be unbelievable. I'm not buying it that Tottenham or Wembley has a better atmosphere. I'm not.
No, it doesn't. Because it's just full of people that don't necessarily care
part
as
of
much.
the package that Sky and
So
Matchroom and all of those are selling now.
It's great for the gate, right? Oh, the gate was this, the gate was that, right? But the fans, they're not having an experience to think, I'll do that again.
Yeah.
You know, if you're sat up in the top at Wembley, trying to look at the screen, never mind the ring, you're not going to come back. Whereas at the O2, there's not a bad seat in the house. Same with the MEN, like up the top, the very nosebleeds now, you probably wouldn't see the ring, but you'd see the screens at least. But you get the atmosphere. And I think going back to these leisure centres, like even when I fought in the Brentwood Centre there in March, the atmosphere was electric. And that's a leisure centre, you know what I mean? You got a few thousand people, but it feels like 20,000 with the atmosphere. Same with your call.
Sorry, Andy, you were going to say.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I've been saying this as well. And we even look at Lee Wood and Josh Warrington, and it was all talk about this was going to be in the City Ground. This is going to be the City Ground, and it cannot fill the Sheffield Arena. There are still tickets on sale today for that.
And did you see Wood has it in his contract that his next fight has to be at the City Ground?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. Well, it must be in the catering wing in the City Ground, because if with Josh Warrington can't fill the Sheffield Arena, how are they going to sell this issue?
Here's what matters, right? Because they've thrown Warrington into this because they're going, it doesn't matter whether he's got a belt or not, because he sells tickets. And you're like, it does matter. The fact that Warrington has had his head punched in by Lara 1.5 times and then beaten by Lopez, that matters. That makes a huge difference. And yeah, fair enough, the Lopez performance looks a lot better now that he's there. But they don't care because they're not watching Lopez now. They're only watching Warrington.
Have you watched the build-up? Have you watched the build-up of this fight?
No.
But Eddie's doing it.
The advertisement, right? This is no joke now. The advertisement for this fight on DAZN looks like a scene from Green Street. It's literally 2 pairs of football hooligans.
Oh, yeah.
And Warrington's in front of one, Woods in front of the other, running towards each other.
Yeah.
It's actually so cringy, like.
And they've got the 2 cities, and they've got Sheffield in between, you know, on a map.
Yeah.
Like,
I saw that.
It's actually,
but like the whole football thing, and I do think
Ricky Hatton did it. It was all right because it was actually people
the
who
novelty back then.
America to go see him. They were actual fans. Yeah, it was genuine.
But you built Ricky. Ricky had 40 odd. What was it? Ricky was 38-0 when he fought Zoo or something like that.
Yeah.
43-0 when he fought Floyd.
But exactly. So here's the other thing as well. If you look at, again, because the quality's gone down so low, Eddie Hearn. So if we go with Hearn as a gauge for the popularity of boxing, at one point, Hearn's interviews with Coogan and everybody else were doing hundreds of thousands of views.
Yeah.
Consistently, and they're not doing 5, 10. Like,
well, I think people have eventually cottoned onto him, and that's the
Ben thing. The damage the Ben thing has done is huge.
Well, it's exposed him, you know, because I think he's been caught out on what he said, you know. I mean, and people have pulled him up on it. Now, granted, it wasn't Ben, it wasn't Cassius Coogan or any of those, but he has been pulled up on what he said, especially about failed boxers and boxers failing tests and then walking back on it because it's Conor Benn, but he'll throw other boxers under the bus to make it look like he cares about testing. I mean, I think Eddie Hearn's just been found out at this point, but I don't think Eddie Hearn even cares about British boxing anymore because he's moved on from that. You know, he's in the worldwide stage now, and that's where he makes more money than pissing around the UK in kind of small hall shows. So he probably treats it with the disdain that people have been treating his shows, you know. But it's a bad day for boxing.
Say with Eddie, right? And we're talking about how lads are brought up. You look at 2 fighters he's got at the moment. 1, Campbell Hatton. 2, Johnny Fisher, right? I'd say Johnny Fisher probably sells more tickets than Campbell Hatton does. Yeah. And probably gets more people watching, right? Johnny Fisher is the one who's being brought along properly. He's actually stepping up every fight he gets. He's only fought a couple of journeymen when you think about it.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, but as well as that,
should be brought up, and that's what makes exciting fights. Like him against, I apologies to his opponent, I can't remember his name, who he fought the Southern Area title. That was actually a decent little scrap. Like,
Yeah,
it was. That
You
was
know,
fight of the night, but it was a dreadful card. It was a dreadful.
but when people fight at their own level, this is when you get the good fights. So, like, in my opinion, if I was in charge of boxing, we'll say, if you're 10-0,
Harry Armstrong.
Harry
I
Armstrong,
knew Armstrong.
Harry Armstrong, he's one tough fella. Like if you're say 10-0, we'll say, right, you should not be able to fight someone with 50 odd losses anymore. That should be it now. You should move on then to like better. It has to be better every time.
Yeah.
And you know,
did you see Campbell Hatton's next opponent's record?
Yeah, the guys had one fight in 9 years and a loss.
Oh my good lord! Like,
why
the thing
is
is,
it
the thing with Campbell, I think it's a bit of an activity because I'm sure Campbell had an injury. Campbell is unfortunate because fair play to him, they have learned and they've stuck him back. But Matchroom know what they're doing in that they do actually know how to how boxing works. They know how to bring people up. They've just got it. They've got it so wide that they're like, right, we need so many people. But we're going to very briefly bring this back onto topic because this is a perfect example of how if you don't bring fighters up when it comes to the big night, they're not ready. And Jordan Thompson wasn't not ready.
I was going to say that is bang on. That was a disgrace.
Because Jordan has a huge amount of potential. Like he's got a lot about him. I'm a little worried about his chin because and I forget this correct, was it Dukar? He fought somebody that wobbled him. And it was, he went through Watson, it was Dukar, yeah. And Dukar's a great one, but you cannot go from fighting Vasyl Dukar and Luke Watkins to the second best cruiserweight in the world.
Sorry, he fought the best cruiserweight in the world, Adam. The Ring Magazine champion.
The best southpaw cruiserweight in the world.
Best southpaw cruiserweight in the world. We'll go with that. Yeah.
Best knockout artist cruiserweight.
Yeah. Because Teo Opetaia is a world class fighter. Like you have to be
bloody
brilliant to beat Bradis, and then
I'm sure Opetaia can punch, right?
Yeah.
But Thompson made Opetaia look like Deontay Wilder the other night. Like everything hurt him. That was the
Gulf in class. And you know what annoyed me the most about that? Hearn admitted it afterwards. He says, "Yeah, he probably wasn't ready, but we were looking for somebody."
It was a roll of the dice, he said.
Yeah.
Bullshit. He just saw a cash cow and he milked it, and he said, "Well, I'm throwing you under that bus." And he admitted it as much in his interviews. One before it and one after it, and I thought, you are an absolute prick, you know that.
But then so is Warren, because look what they did with Joyce.
Oh well, Warren's every bit as bad. But Warren does some bullshit about it. Warren
was just like, "Who's Joyce?
Who's
that?"
I don't know her.
Yeah, it was that set. But I think Opetaia. So the bit that impressed me most was how good he looked after the layoff and the injury. That was because again, going back to Charlo didn't look sharp, whereas Opetaia looked really, really sharp, and it was he did what he was supposed to do, and not enough fighters do what they're supposed to do.
He didn't play with his food.
No, he didn't play with his food, and he did exactly what he's supposed to do, which is really good. On that same night, we had Caroline Dubois. Who did Caroline fight? Who written this down? I've just written Dubois down, so my apologies. But Caroline's lead hook is unbelievable. I'm upset the Meyer fight's not going to happen because that's the perfect fight to make. Because you're not getting the Katie Taylor fight. And the Michaela Mayer fight would have been perfect because Mayer is more experienced, but I think Caroline's better. But it was that whole card at the York Hall was pretty dire.
It really was.
And I literally only went on because I was like, I want to see if Shane makes it with his Uber. But big up Ellie Scottney, who again was really, really good on another fairly card on that one. But the schedule looks to be picking up towards the end of the year. But I thought Scottney and Dubois, again, big fan of Shane McGuigan on this channel. Both looked really good, but we're not going to go into too much detail on that. Anything you'd like to add, boys?
Yeah, I just want to. Oh, sorry.
Andy, go on. No, go on.
I just want to circle back. We were talking about boxing and the masses and whatever, and I don't know, have we covered that huge pay-per-view that was Smith Eubank Jr.? But on that day, my dad rang me and asked me, "How do I get that fight?" And I said, "Do you want to watch it, Dad?" And he said, "Yeah." He's been watching Sky Sports News all day. It's been drummed into his brain. He remembers Ben Eubank. He wants to see this. And I said, fine. And I got it in for him. And the next day I rang him. What do you think of that? That was awful. I said, I was going to tell you that, but, you wanted to watch it. I'd let you watch it. And, Sky pulled that stunt once. They won't fool the likes of my dad again. That trick's done now, So there will be Eubank Smith 3. Mark my words, unless Eubank Ben happens.
That's happening. That's 100% happening.
I think Eubank Smith is a banker for Boxer because that's what they'll want.
So we haven't spoken about Eubank Smith. I totally forgot that happened in September. What did we think?
I thought Eubank learned a lot in those 6 weeks with Bomac and the boys. His style.
He wasn't gun shy anyway.
No. Was not
didn't leave the airport.
That took a second.
But yeah, no, I thought Eubank looked class. Smith, whatever injuries he had, whatever weight loss he had, the weight thing is not an excuse. That doesn't rub with me. Especially, I'm someone who battles with my own weight. And like at the end of the day, if you get in the ring, you get in the ring. No matter what weight you are, no matter how hard it is to lose weight, that can't be an excuse if you're happy to step in between the ropes and try and win.
It's no fault.
But like we were saying it of Charlo, can we not say it of Smith? Was he just happy to take the check?
Well, I think with Smith, I think it's a little different because he's knocked Eubank out. So it's not like he doesn't think he can't win, but he's got himself he's been unprofessional, even if he's been injured, to put on that much weight. And then he's been told, by all accounts, what's happened is he's been told, look, your rematch clause, the fight goes away if you're not ready by this date because Chris will go fight somebody else. And he goes, right, well, I've got to be ready. So he's taken off 42 pounds by all accounts is what he had to take off in 3 months, which is a ludicrous amount of weight. I don't even think, it wasn't even 3 months because it was July to early September. So it was 8 weeks. That is and then he's obviously taken away his chin. But I would be interested in a third fight on the basis that I genuinely think that in the first fight, Eubank cutting the weight for Ben had a huge effect.
100%.
And I think in the second fight, Smith cutting all the weight off, which is his own bloody fault. I blame him, right? But I do think that has an effect. And I'm like, I would quite like to watch the third and see what happens.
There you go.
I would actually watch that.
There you go. Ben Boxer. You've got your build up for your third fight.
It's definitely a sellable fight.
The weight.
The rematch went how I thought the first one would go.
That's what everyone was saying. That's exactly what because I picked Smith in the first fight because I thought that Eubank hadn't done that. I just had never beaten anyone near as good as Smith. But I thought he was brilliant in the second fight, and I thought that I think he knew that Liam had fucked it, and he gave him absolutely no chance because you see it all the time where they go, I've got it in front of me, and they go heading straight into it. And the one way the other guy can win the fight, Ruiz Joshua comes to mind. They go barreling in, and somehow it all goes wrong. And I thought Eubank was superb that night. And like you say, I thought Bomac did really well.
That version of Eubank, the way he boxed, that's a hard man to beat for anyone in that division.
So I'm going to propose a fight here then, gentlemen. We're going to get Ben. I've got no interest in the Ben fight, but we're going to get it. Charlo, Eubank.
Love it.
He's not going to fight Janibek, and that's the fight I'd like to see. But Charlo Eubank at 160.
Wasn't that the fight he was meant to have after his first fight on PBC? He fought. He got
Korobov.
Your man got Korobov, yeah, and he was meant to fight Charlo after that, I believe.
Yeah,
and then that fell through.
Yes.
But do you think you're going to go for Charlo?
No, not a chance in hell.
So he's just going to play it safe in the UK, and
he is going to do the professional boxing equivalent of what Tommy Fury's doing, which is he's going to fight Ben for tens of millions in a fight that people will talk
as I call it, the nepo baby fight.
Speaking of Tommy Fury and the lads next weekend. Tommy Fury and the lads. That's what the card's called.
That's what.
You've got Fidel Riley there at the weekend, who I mentioned to you. Who trained KSI, was his coach, was in the build up for the Logan Paul fights, everything. Big YouTube channel of his own. He's a star on the YouTube world. York Hall was still not full on Saturday night
because how many? Because really, how many of them buy tickets?
Exactly. But yet these YouTube cards, the Misfits cards, whatever you want to call it, well, the Misfits card there that was in Newcastle was a joke. But the one that's on next weekend in Manchester, that'll be full from 4 p.m. People will be there and it'll be packed out from 4 p.m. I guarantee it.
Well, I think the Manchester Arena is a little less intimidating than the York Hall. Because you have to remember,
glamorous, doesn't it?
Sorry?
It is,
It looks a bit more glamorous.
Exactly, and it's not as seedy and kind of grubby looking.
Green in London, yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, like it's a different audience. These people want to be able to take their selfies, and they need the lighting for it. So that's the way it is. But anyway,
we have to give credit to these. Like I know you guys don't watch it. I do watch it because I'm a fool. I tune into these things. But like, you have to give credit to these YouTubers and influencer boxers. Because they're getting it right from the get-go. They've got the platform. They're using that then to sell tickets, put bums on seats.
I've been saying this for years. This is what boxers should do. Professional boxers can do exactly what they do. There's no reason. And Junaid Boston has started doing it. So one of the kids at the Steel City Gym started doing that sort of stuff. And more and more. This is the future. Here's how a boxer stands out. We all love All Access and 24/7, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do it yourself.
Look at Ryan Garcia.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, he had the Hollywood glamour looks as well. I mean, you're not going to.
Look, it's all part of it. If he didn't put those clips of him hitting pads for 10 seconds.
But if he looked like. If he looked like, Gollum.
If he looked like me, it wouldn't have worked. Yeah, I know.
If he looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, it wouldn't have worked. I mean, the fact he looks like a Latino kind of movie star helps.
A pop
star,
He's a male model to go with it,
So when I saw him come into that arena, Jesus Christ, it was literally like, there was hordes of young girls out. It was like a pop star had just entered the building. And I mean,
that was De La Hoya.
Yeah,
what?
It was.
That was De La Hoya.
But De La Hoya had an Olympic gold medal.
But Ryan had 200 amateur fights.
He was.
We forget Ryan is a legitimately good amateur. Ryan is it Ryan that's got 2 wins over Haney? Yeah. Right, like Ryan's no mug. He's an idiot because he can't get his head screwed on. But
it's how you market yourself. And like these influencer boxers, and the good thing about the influencer boxing that I've been paying attention to is they're getting better and better steady. Like the lads who are no good, they're not getting on anymore. So the like this card that's on the weekend after this weekend is actually quite a decent card. There's 50-50 matchups there.
There is more chance I watch the card you're talking about than I watch the Fury and Ngannou card because it's competitive.
I'm definitely not watching Fury and Ngannou, even though there actually is a good undercard.
Well, I like Wardley Adelaide.
Wardley Adelaide, I'm really excited for. I've got a lot of time for Fabio Wardley.
Well, that's it. I want Fabio Wardley to beat Adelaide because let's face it, nobody likes Adelaide.
Speaking of the likes of Jordan Thompson, Fabio Wardley, and you mentioned the amateurs there, Adam, I think a lot more people are coming in from the unlicensed game. And the unlicensed game, it's getting better and better as well.
The standard's getting better. The longer it exists. So this is the other thing, right? And like, Enda and I are both big into our rugby, and I'm not sure, look, if you love it as much as we do, right?
I watch Ireland. That's it.
Yeah, that's right. Right. So rugby has this thing where it's called rugby values, and it's a very nice way of saying you believe that you're better than everybody else, and you're not prepared to learn and change, right? Boxing has this particular problem as well, which is we know better. This is how we do it. We're not going to adapt because this is the way we've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
White collar stuff, the unlicensed stuff is basically it is teaching you to be a professional boxer because you have to sell tickets. It's a big event. You've got your mates coming in. That's stuff that you don't learn. And the amateurs, it's like Pat McCormack is one of the best amateurs you will ever see. One of the greatest fighters in the country. And he's going to do the Newcastle card, and there's going to be half the arena there because they haven't built that. I mean, Pat's not been built because of his own choices, but it's a separate issue. We've got to they've got to fight before we get back onto my activity rant. Pat should be out 4 times next year, headlining across the Northeast. That's what should happen, and it won't.
Is Pat from the same boxing gym, amateur gym, as Joe Laws?
I think so.
That tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Like the Berkeley, I think it is where they're from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
they get behind Joe Laws more than they do a fighter who's 10 times better.
Yeah, but it's
You know?
personality, isn't it?
Yeah, it's how you market yourself. You know, I
No,
remember
but,
seeing Joe
but
Laws.
not just marketing, it is your personality as well. You know, because if you
Yeah.
don't have that personality, marketing can
But
make
by
it
all
look
accounts,
That's what I mean by
Yeah.
market yourself, though. You have to have that
Yeah.
personality to be able to market
But-
yourself.
But by all accounts, Pat and Luke are not shrinking violets.
No,
And if Vladimir and Vitaly can market themselves to a point of fame and significance, then they can do it.
it's just the world we live in, and you've got to adapt with it. And with Fabio Wardley, like there's a big difference between what white collar really is and between unlicensed boxing.
Mhm.
So white collar is for people who've never stepped in a ring before. They train 8 weeks and they have a charity bout, whereas unlicensed is proper fighters, ex-pros,
Yeah.
ex-amateurs, whatever you want. Imagine stepping into a white collar fight for charity, and then Wardley's across from you,
Yeah, you're like, shit. That's why I
And
run.
then-
That's why I've started running again.
That's very fair.
Yeah.
But and then you get the unlicensed where you could be fighting any class of fighter who you could be fighting top class lads, who are looking to turn pro, or ex-amateurs who want to get a taste of the limelight, like you're saying, before they turn pro. And these levels, and people hear this, unlicensed boxer, and they think of Snatch or something. It's totally different now to what it was.
Yeah.
And the likes of Wardley, the likes of Thompson, Thompson's going to come again. There's no doubt about it. He's a
He's
talented
got too
man.
much quality to not to. But then
exactly.
he's what they need is you need to fight a couple of times, and then they go, right, well, how are we going to build him? And who's the fight for Jordan Thompson?
I hope soon. Who would you put him in with next?
Chevron Clark.
Yeah,
I'd move him up to heavyweight next. To be honest, he looked very fragile.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's fucking huge.
But
he's bigger than a Coley.
Yeah, he is. And the thing is as well, right? They use that the whole time. Sky Sports will use it. Boxer will use it. DAZN will use it. Whatever. Oh, he's had 0 amateur fights, but he could have had 50 unlicensed fights.
Couple of the boys I know that actually did quite a bit of amateur stuff down in Dorset, they'd keep active doing the white collar stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd have, say, 15 fights in a year, but their amateur card said 3 because they couldn't get fights.
Exactly. So
And
they're
that's
looking
how you do
like
it.
they're looking like they've no experience at all.
Yeah. Suddenly you've
Well,
got this guy
they're
going
all-
into the novice championships with 8 fights, and he's had 35, 40 fights.
Exactly, and they're seasoned. And then when they turn pro, he's good for a fella who only has 3 amateur fights.
Yeah.
But he could have had 40 odd fights.
Yeah.
So I hope within the next few years, it'll get noticed more and more, and that they'll get credit for these fights. Because people kind of poo-poo them because of what it used to be. But it's totally different now.
So I think going forward, so I've got with the money, particularly from Saudi and everything, right? In my opinion, the money is about to fall. The arse is about to fall out of both boxing. It's about to fall out of sport because we've now reached an absolutely ludicrous level that we're not going to get into the whole details of. Right? When it does, that will do the sporting world the world of good.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you now, the best sports at the minute are the women's sports. And the reason it's the best is because it's competitive, but it has that everyone's learning and everyone's exciting. And it's like in the women's stuff, you're like, right, when they get to the top, it's right, they're all kind of together because they've got nothing else to do. In the rugby, it's so exciting because they're in this fledgling professional era where short of England, who have been a professional side for donkey's years, and the All Blacks, everybody's now suddenly going, shit, we're getting paid and we can actually not do our jobs, and you're watching them get better, and it's just so that's the sort of stuff that I'm looking forward to. Speaking of the women, the most egregious decision of the entire month goes to Sandy Ryan and Jessica McCaskill's fight.
My God.
That was I think we've talked about this before, is I have classes for decisions, right? And you get you get a close call.
Yeah. Just before you continue, Adam, there, I didn't see that fight, but I'm going to have to go as well. So I'm going to go, and you two can discuss that fight. But I'll talk to you again. Is that okay?
It is a pleasure, my friend. Good to have you.
Enjoy our rant.
So little close fight that I think went the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Then we have
Golovkin Canelo too.
Yeah, that's a close fight that I think they win. Right. Then you have a poor decision, which I think would say Chocolatito Estrada 2.
Okay.
Right? That's kind of the levels we're looking at. Then you have this, which was a dyed-in-the-wool robbery. Sandy Ryan won that fight somewhere between 8 rounds to 2 and 10-0.
Yeah, I had it.
Jessica was... Yeah, it was dreadful. Sandy was brilliant, and Jessica looked terrible against Chantel, which is why I thought Sandy would beat her. But oh my god.
No, it was a mismatch nearly.
Yeah.
Only for Ryan not having a big punch on her. That was the only thing, letting it go the distance, we'll say. But Jesus Christ, Jessica can't watch that back and say, oh yeah, could have won this round, could have won that round. It wasn't one bit close.
No, it wasn't.
Not even the slightest bit. And you have fights then, like Taylor Serrano, even Taylor Cameron, which I didn't think was close. Some people
I didn't think it was particularly close either.
No, I had it 7-3 to Cameron, but then you look at this one, nobody could call it close.
I've not seen anyone go, it was controversial, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I've not had anyone go, oh, I could see how they got there. No, it was rotten.
Nah, it was bad. It was one of the worst of the year, if not the worst.
I can't think of a worse decision this year.
You had Lundy there at the weekend. Was it not Lundy?
Oh, Lubin.
Lubin, yeah. Sorry, and both ex-Bud opponents.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a robbery too, in my opinion. But nothing like the Sandy Ryan one.
I didn't catch that fight. I didn't catch the Lubin one.
It was actually a decent enough fight.
Was it?
But I didn't think he won.
Do you think they're lining Lubin up for Spence?
That's a good shout. Actually, I didn't consider.
I think that's where that's going.
Give him a good win and lead him to Spence.
Yeah, exactly. Just get him in. Go right. Well, he won the last fight. We're all going to forget that he didn't win his last fight, and then when Spence.
Yeah, I didn't even consider it. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's where I think that's going.
We mentioned Zhang Joyce, but we didn't actually speak about it earlier.
No.
Zhang's got the world at his feet right now.
Just brilliant, wasn't it?
I thought I said 6 rounds, and he did it in half that time.
No. I thought that what did I say? I thought it went late. I thought it would go longer because I thought that Joyce would come in at a normal. If Joyce came in at a normal weight, he'd be nice and resilient, and he might be able to wear him down. And we've always talked about Zhang's gas tank, and I think Joyce just doesn't matter because he's just able to hit him a bit like a heavy bag. But, oh my god, that punch! I think that is the second best knockout of the year.
And the first one is another Asian fighter.
It is another Asian fighter, correct? That fought this month as well.
Yes.
Juto Nakatani.
I was going to say, we lead on to that one, yeah.
Yes, we're professional guys. We know exactly what we're doing, which was, in my opinion, the best card of the month so far, and best card towards the end of the year, which was the one out in Japan, which had Kenshiro versus Butler. Kenshiro being the best light flyweight in the world, and utterly phenomenal. Honestly, if you do genuinely love your boxing like the way that we love it, I think I put this out as a tweet, and I think I put it as a tweet knockdown rule thing. I haven't caught up on that yet, so they might have done it. Japan have the best top 5 fighters of any country in the world.
Yeah, no question in it.
Yeah, they've got Kenshiro is incredible, and he was brilliant in stopping him.
You think he moves up now?
If he can't get the unification, yeah, I think they'll go for one more unification if they can. And I think they're going to go for, is it Kershinger or something like that? The guy that's on the DAZN card. The IDF champion.
Imagine him versus the winner of Bam versus Edwards.
Well, I think that's the next one that they're going to go for, because I think Eddie's done a big thing in Japan, hasn't he?
Has he made a deal over there?
I think Matchroom have done a deal in Japan. I don't know what it entails, but I think that's what they're going for.
Australia and Japan are very close to each other geographically. So
close-ish, yeah.
Yeah. No, you know what I mean? They're close.
Yeah. They're on that side of the world. They're that far across. But the guy that I absolutely adore is Nakatani. He's I think he's the third best fighter in Japan. Inoue and Ioka are the first two, but I want to see Nakatani Ioka. That's what I want to see.
if Nakatani catches him.
Yeah, because he's so big and he looks like I don't think he's not this good, right? But he stands and kind of fights a little bit like a small version of Alexis Arguello.
Yeah, good shout.
Tall, long, and punch like fuck. He's a brilliant fighter.
I call him the Japanese Tommy Hearns.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
exactly like that.
He's got that, like, literally, if he hits you at the end of his punch, you're finished.
Yeah, and that was it, because that's what happened, is every time Cortez was on the end of that left hand, he just went, because, it's just, he's such a super fighter. And
it seems with Nakatani too, it's effortless.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't put effort into his punches. He doesn't really sit down on them. He just throws with brilliant technique. And it's the same with the number 1 fighter in Japan and number 2 fighter in the world, Inoue.
Yeah.
No effort goes into those shots. He just throws them so crisp and fluid.
Yes, but there's no I call it like a catch or like a hold, but it's like so for me, when it came to, if I was trying to hit somebody hard, I lose a lot of the actual gusto because my shoulder's so tense to try and go through there.
Yeah, you gotta be loose.
And you got to be loose, and it was my left hook was always the one that would then come around. But it's just so beautiful, and you can see
like
it.
You know, it's at the very end of it where the pressure
it's
comes
the crack.
Out.
You've got to be.
Yeah.
And my old coach used to say it's loose arms and hard hands.
Exactly.
And that's where it all is. And it was Nakatani is just so good, and just Kenshiro's so good, and I just want those guys to keep fighting. And I'm so excited for Bam.
It's so exciting that they're all in and around the same weight class.
Yeah. I genuinely think we've got a golden age of little men.
Definitely.
This is the best. I mean, I think there have been greats, but I think in terms of the overall quality, 108 to 122 is the best it's ever been. It's incredible.
Unbelievable.
And they're going to fight, and they fight each other.
They're not, like Bam Edwards got made like that.
Yeah.
So easy.
And credit to both of them. Although Bam's got some weight to shift. He's got time, but he looks big.
Yeah, but that's going to come around quick to us as well.
Yeah. Well, you think of it, we're already getting very close to mid-October.
Yeah, it's mental. And like you look towards the end of the year, 2 huge fights, technically announced, not announced, with Fury, Usyk, and with Ben Eubank 3, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, it's probably going to be carded as that,
Is it? Actually, that's probably a very good shout. It'll be Ben versus Eubank, and then big 3 in the middle.
More than likely.
That's exactly what they'll do.
But like those 2 end of December, I don't know if they'll go against one another. I think it'd be stupid.
I think that if Fury Usyk is made, they move the Ben Eubank.
Yeah.
If they go, I mean, I will still be very surprised if somebody goes December 23rd. It's interesting because they're waiting to see what happens Saturday.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not much to look forward to in November, is there?
Oh, there was, I think there's a couple of things that are kind of like creeping out of the woodwork. And then this is, right, so here's another problem with boxing is because we've got so many networks, it's so hard to keep up with everything. If you haven't, subscribe to Dan Raphael's email thing.
He knows it all, yeah.
He knows it all, and he puts out a boxing schedule. So big up Dan Raphael. That's so helpful and it makes such a difference. But the last fight we're going to go over is Lopez versus Joet Gonzalez. Because we were talking about that kind of like great little thing. And just at the other end, we've got the featherweights. And I think that the featherweights, they're not necessarily as good, but they are all really into fighting each other in terms of like Lara, Warrington, who I think's seen better days personally, but he's really been in it. He's fought everyone. We've got Mick Conlon, Wood, who's a big favorite in this household. And we've got, in my opinion, Lopez is the second best, and Ramirez, who also fought out in Japan recently, he's the best. But I think that's hopefully the fight we get next.
I think I often forget Ramirez because I think Lopez's knockout of Conlon first. So he's the first that comes to mind. But Ramirez is second to none. He really is. He's excellent. And I think, you look at Wood Warrington this weekend. I know we've not touched on who we think will win that yet. But whoever does win, you kind of just say to them, look, don't go near him. Just stay away from him there.
We're going to go Duke. We're going to go Duke. He's all wrong for us, baby. We don't need that kind of man in our lives.
Absolutely.
If I was... so I'll go on the record now as I think Lee Wood knocks him out.
Oh, same. I think too much for Warrington at this stage.
what a story Lee Wood is, by the way. What a story Lee Wood is. And he's
Small hall guy come up.
So here's another example. Right. So Lee Wood is for anyone that's new to the channel, Luke will know that Christy is a very discerning boxing fan, my missus. And Lee Wood is one of the very few fighters that makes it onto the big telly now.
There she goes.
So
is it the hair or is it the fighting?
It's definitely the hair and the fighting.
But no, he's excellent. Like what he did against UCAN, you know, unbelievable.
We haven't had a win like that, and we've got, like, if you think where that was a shot to nothing, that was effectively what Jordan Thompson did. This weekend. That's the level we were kind of talking about, and he was brilliant that night, and he's had so many great performances, and you know, the knockout and the way he returned from the Lara fight, the Conlon fight,
the fight of the year last year.
Like, we were talking about, and like the tweet went out that it was is it Zepeda and Baranchek was the fight? Best fight of the century, of the decade so far.
I think it is, to be fair.
And I think that is, but I think that might be your second best.
Oh yeah, if I was picking number 2, it would be that one.
Yeah.
Like that fight was in January, and it was still the fight of the year.
Yeah, it's still the fight of the year by the end of the year.
You know, so that's how good it was, you know. But yeah, I think Wood will be too much for him. I think he's too versatile for him. Warrington has one speed. Yeah. And if you can slow him down, he's screwed. There's nothing he can do to you.
And if you can, and the thing is with Warrington, he's been, like you say, if you can vary the pace and if you can catch him because he's there to be caught now, that experience with Lara, it's worn down that chin a little bit, and he hasn't got the power to keep Wood off.
And I think because Wood and his team have been very clever now about this head business, you know, the referee's going to be hyper vigilant of it.
Yep.
You know, so it's going to become, if it is an issue, it's going to become an issue very quickly, I think. So that's been very smart of them in the build up to keep mentioning it. And Warrington's going to have his second best weapon, I'll say, took away from him.
And that's, you had to represent Enda there, but it's very similar to when the McGuigan's and Willem Smith's team made a point out of Okole's holding, so that within 2 rounds it was a problem.
It was an issue, and it's dead right though. You know, it's outside the rules, so
we've got to do it. This has always been the thing, is it's legal until it's not legal, and the second it's illegal, you're in a lot of trouble. I remember Mick Coleman. I can't remember who he was fighting, but it was on like a BT Sport in lockdown, and he nearly got himself disqualified because he couldn't help but throw low.
Oh yes, it's just the trajectory of his punch.
Yeah, and it was just the way that the guy's body frame worked out, and the way that Mick's shots came in, is it just kept landing low, and it was the corner just went, just don't throw them.
But that was the same as Fraser Clark versus Allen. Like I would have disqualified Clark.
Well, I thought the Clark one was worse, because I thought at one point I was like, what is he doing? I was like, you're 6'5", why are you punching low?
Literally, there was no need for it. But yeah, like, when we talk about all these random fights as well, boxing is in such a funny state, isn't it? Like,
it's weird. It's in a very strange position to be in.
It is. But this weekend now, you know, if Enda's right and it's not sold out yet, that's worrying, because these 2 lads are ticket sellers.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that it's not at the City Ground has taken a bit of the luster off it. I think all the controversy that's gone around everything else is it's the effect that the Ben stuff. I don't think that can be underestimated. I do think that Warrington's not
taste in people's mouths.
Yeah, and Warrington's not the ticket seller he once was, just because he's been beaten a few times, and that is the reality of the situation. But that's a fight I'm legitimately excited for, and I'm going to actually I'll be tuning in, but I'm going to be watching the build-up stuff now. Now that you've reminded me it's this weekend, because obviously with Fury and Ngannou, that's been a lot of the internet space.
Yeah.
When I think that's probably part of it, as well as it's kind of dampened that down. But that's a really good fight. And
it's so funny, isn't it? Because, you know, Fury Usyk announced they've signed to fight each other, while Fury has this blockbuster fight. It's really dampened that fight for people.
Of course it has, because everyone's like, oh yeah, well then I don't. Yeah, like I don't care.
Yeah, Fury's looking through him. You know, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because it is a cash grab. We all know it's a cash grab.
Oh yeah. And like, who can blame him? He's going to beat up a lad who can't box for millions and millions of pounds. But when people, I don't know if you've watched it. I tuned in for the Netflix show, The Furies.
I did not watch it.
Yeah, I watched it because I'm a glutton for punishment.
Absolutely.
But like, you see how he is about things and how much he thinks he's worth. And it's going back to what we were saying about the Saudis. Like, we're coming to the pinnacle here of money.
Mhm. But we don't have more.
And soon it's just going to break in on itself soon.
Yeah.
And that triangle is going to be upside down. And people are going to have to scrimp and save and struggle. And like, back in the day, boxing wasn't lucrative, even for the world champions.
No.
Do you know? And it's going to get to that again where they're going to be probably millionaires, we'll say. But they're not going to be Floyd Mayweather level. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, but then even if you think about it, Floyd didn't make as much money as these guys are, because Floyd's Showtime contract was at $250 million, and Floyd's going to make 200 million. Sorry,
And then
Tyson will
the
make 200
Pacquiao
million.
fight was separate.
Yeah, the
and
Pacquiao fight
so
was its own thing.
McGregor. Yeah.
But again, the Pacquiao fight made them money because it sold. This won't sell a third of the Pacquiao fight.
Not at all. How many people are just going to stick it on their Fire Stick?
Yeah, well, this is it. And this is another thing that we'll talk about, like briefly mention, is the effect that because it's so expensive, people have Fire Sticks and they're not going to watch it. And they're talking about illegal streaming. And I might make it accessible and affordable.
Like, for example, the last big fight I went to was the Cam Brook.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I'm talking about like big arenas now, not
yeah.
The one before that was Lomachenko Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Take COVID out of the equation because obviously,
yeah.
But anything. So that's like 2 big events in 2 years, we'll say. Take out COVID. So that's one big event a year I've been to on average for the last few years.
Yep.
I've not been to one since that. I've not had any inclination to, like, even the Katie Taylor fights, right? Those were good cards, full of Irish. The tickets just weren't worth it.
No, they're too expensive.
For what we're going to be. Yeah, gone up.
It's,
like, I think I paid £230 for the Campbell Lomachenko tickets, right?
Yeah.
And I was in ridiculously good seats.
Yeah.
With, an amazing view of the entire O2 arena around me. Just above, the floor seats.
Yeah, so you're in the perfect bed because you're dead level.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't have wanted to be really anywhere else apart from ringside. And that's for £230. That's a lot of money still. But for the same tier of ticket for the Katie Taylor fight, would have been €600.
Yeah.
Do you know?
It's insane.
It doesn't compute like.
So when they did Fight Camp, and I always remember this, Fight Camp tickets were £750.
Yeah, because they had to make it.
Because they had to make it there, but realistically, that didn't make a difference. If they had 100 tickets, that was £750. That's what, 75 grand?
Yeah.
So that's not doing anything to the show. It's just expensive.
And like Eddie reckons he lost millions on those fight camps.
Yeah, but it kept the brand.
Yeah, exactly. In the long run, you have to look at bigger picture. And if you made these tickets cheaper, you'll fill the place.
Of course you will, because people will pay for it.
So at the end of the day, you might be losing maybe 10% of what you could have made with less people.
Mm.
But if you're getting atmosphere, you're getting bums on seats, you're getting people, repeat customers.
Yep.
This is where they're missing out, you see.
Would you remember when you would go, because we'll finish on this because we've both got to run, right? Do you remember when you first started to go to boxing, the top tier tickets were 10, 20 quid?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then they were 40 quid. Now they're 60 to 80 quid for one where basically, for nosebleeds, where I'm like, I'm going to have to go home and watch this again.
Yeah.
Right? I was the best sport, not just boxing, the best sporting atmosphere I've ever been to was Carl Froch versus Lucien Boutte. It was about 12 years ago. It was in Nottingham Arena, right? And that was, I paid about 100 quid for floor tickets.
Fuck.
Something like honestly, I remember thinking when we bought tickets to go to White Fury, and this was the biggest mistake I've done, right? Cost us more to sit in the second back row of Wembley than it did for me to go sit on the floor and watch Froch from, I think it was like 7 rows back.
Unreal.
Yeah.
And that Boutte fight, that was the performance of his lifetime. That was.
Yeah, that was iconic. And it's we were talking about this being at seminal moments because we were talking, obviously, Scotland are playing Ireland at the weekend. Mm-hmm. And it could be a very seminal moment in Scottish rugby history. I think Ireland's seminal moment is going to come in a few weeks rather than playing Scotland. But
yeah,
it's one of those ones where you go, I was there at a moment where history changed, and I was there at a moment when boxing took a turn, and I think boxing's about to go the other way.
I think so. And it could benefit us in the long run where things will have to get cheaper.
Yeah.
Where they'll have to, come back to the drawing board.
Something's got to change, guys. Something's got to change.
Exactly. But look, we'll all tune in and keep supporting it because that's our job at the end of the
Well,
day.
this is it. This is what we love, and we've got to support it. And then the best advice I can give to anybody, if you are watching and you want to go to fights, is buy from the fighters. Don't buy from the ticket machines or the ticket websites. That's the only advice I'll ever give you. Is when you see a fighter put out I'm fighting on this card. If you want to go with that card, you buy from one of the undercard fighters because that'll get them another gig, and it matters. It makes a huge difference.
That makes the difference. Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Review.
Absolutely.
Like if it's a good weekend of boxing, we'll be delighted at the end of the day, and that's
exactly it. And we'll be back again next month to go on this, and then hopefully we'll be a bit more active on the channel with work settling down and life getting back to normal as well as everyone goes up to Christmas, which is all very terrifying. But thank you as always, my friend. It has been a pleasure.
No bother. Cheers.
Cheers.
See you later.